Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Trek Canon. So, today we're going to be talking about Season 3, Episode 3 of Star Trek Lower Decks, Mining the Mind's Mind. Now, off the bat, I'm going to say I really enjoyed this episode. There was a lot to unpack in this episode, and I'm going to get into all of that unpacking now, I guess. So, for anybody who hasn't seen the episode, please go check it out and come back and pick back up on this video because there will be spoilers. And people who watch the channel, y'all know how I roll. So, let's just get on right into it. I took notes. All right, so I'm kind of going to be jumping over places, back and forth a little bit, but please try to stay with me. So, like I said, the name of this episode is Mining the Minds. All right. And when the episode first started, when they were down on the planet and I was seeing the little green orbs, which we found out later to be something different, the first thing I thought of is, oh, wow, man, we are back on the planet that the Horta. I don't know if you guys, I'll try to put the uh, image of what a Horta is, but it's the dude up under the rug in the original series. But I thought that we was going to be going back to dealing with the Horta species, and I've always wanted to revisit them because the last we saw of them, they were a friendly species that ended up helping the colonists that was on that planet with the mining. Now, let's talk about Federation colonists. You know, they was absolutely right in the episode where they talked about the trope of how Federation colonists always want to venture out and go and explore the unknown without joining Starfleet or any type of Starfleet backup. A lot of them just go and do their thing and end up on these worlds and in these messed up situations. That's been going on since the original series. One of the first examples was I think it was Operation Annihilate, where or was it the Immunity Syndrome, where we find out that Kirk's brother died as a Federation colonist on this particular world because of this invasive species. So it's a lot of times, man, where Federation colonists go doing things. Think of the Raven, you know? Who does that? Who does that right there? But they talked about that trope a little bit where Federation colonists are always out doing something and getting themselves in trouble, but in an effort to push science, man, to push boundaries, to push themselves. All right. So there's a couple of plots going on in this particular episode. The first one we deal with what's going on the planet, which we have the away team consisting of Rutherford, Mariner, Bormer, and Phillips. Also with a lower decks crew from another ship, which we'll talk about later. There's three of them as well. Now, on the other plot deals with Tindy trying to basically become a senior bridge officer in the science department, and she gets teamed up with a mentor who's the bird guy. And I don't remember his name, but the one that's all full of himself. You know, he reminds me of that guy from the Next Generation who had came on board with the Traveler. You know, it kind of reminds me of him, but always full of himself. Always, that's him. But he's supposed to take on the role of being Tindy's mentor. And one, he's never done it before, and two, he doesn't really seem interested in the role. All right, so Tindy's picking up on this. Now, the thing is that the a diplomatic, I guess the first contact was made. Now it's time for the diplomacy, and we have two ships. We have the Cerritos, of course, with Captain Freeman, and we have the other ship, which is ran by Captain Mayer. All right, and I forget the name of the other ship, but they're both there to finish up the diplomacy and negotiations with the species that's on the planet and the colonists. Now, the thing is this. Um, we switch back down to the planet, and we find out that these orbs are silicon based, and basically they project your fantasy, and that fantasy, if you touch it, turns you to stone. Okay. Now, This particular episode seemed like a, ma- a mixture of several different episodes as I was watching it. Those episodes was Man Trap from the original series. It had a bit of the Cloud Minders in it as well from the original series, and of course that Hoarder episode from the beginning. But that's as far as that goes. But they touched also on how the Federation and Starfleet in particular has a terrible time identifying silicone based life forms. And one of the most immediate things that pops into my head is the episode with the silicone based life forms that basically refer to humans as ugly bags of mostly water. Now, it's been so many times in Star Trek. I think even the Hoarder was silicone based. So it's a lot of times in Star Trek where they are always trying to identify life, but for some strange reason, silicone based life seems to be something that they have a hard time detecting, all right, and coming to terms with. Now, I like the way that they threw, and when I say they, this mentor, he was reading the book about mentoring and science and everything like that, and it had the forward by Ambassador Spock, which I thought was a great callback to one, how badass Spock is as a science officer, all right? And the fact that um, they put him as a call, they had a callback to Spock, period. So I thought that was cool. Speaking of callbacks, we go back down to the planet, right? And they have protective gloves on and they're putting up these orbs, which I'm surprised that these uh, visions started to occur because they seem to have been protecting themselves with it. But they are psychic orbs, so that has nothing to do with it. I guess the protection was just so we won't turn to stone. But I'm gonna get into that. So we find out that Rutherford, the engineer, his fantasy is of course Dr. Leia Brahms. Now that is a direct call back to, of course, Geordi, all right, with his love of Dr. Leia Brahms from fine episodes like Booby Trap. Wait, hold on one moment. Thing is, I rarely ever hear a siren where I'm at, right? And as soon as I do my video, that's when they want to give me the Grand Theft Auto background noise. So anyway, it's a direct call back to episodes like Booby Trap and stuff like that, where Dr. Leia Brahms, who even Jordy referenced for really, hold on. So it was a call back to her who and her expertise, which Rutherford even talked about as far as her and her work, expertise. Now, here's the thing. When we start to see everybody else's fantasies, right? We get to see Boimler's fantasy about being called to help against the Borg and everything like that, and he's rescued by Mariner. And then we get to see Mariner's fantasy, which is an Andorian female. Now, this is going to be a side note, and this is one of those rare times in my videos where I get a little political. This is the thing. I've held it as a personal belief based on every time I see things in media, whether it's commercials, whether it's movie series, whatever, all right, that there's going to be one of two things. If a person that is black is represented in the show, all right, one of two things is going to happen. That person is either going to be in an interracial relationship, or that person is going to be in a same sex relationship. All right. So think about people like, for when episode, series like Picard, for instance, where we know from season one that Ralphie had a husband, had a child, and everything like that. We know that Seven of Nine from Voyager was interested in men. When she made her list of potential mates, none of them were female. Now, of course, people can develop over time and all this stuff, develop interest and all that stuff, but I'm talking about in canon. So, but in season two, now Ralphie and Seven are a couple. You know what I mean? So it, that had set me off for a moment when I seen that Mariner, the only black representation in Lower Decks, right, is you know, like, I don't understand it. You know, if you think about the original series back in the day, where in Man Trap, we was just talking about that episode. In the episode Man Trap, when Uhura was walking through the corridors and the salt monster was like the salt vampire looked into her thoughts and basically became what she desired. All right, take a look at that guy. All right, that is a good representation. When you think of Deep Space Nine, when you think of Cisco and the person he chose to be with, which was Cassidy Yates, that was a great representation. All right, especially to someone like me. So I don't know why they have to keep doing that. So now I'm gonna slide off my little thingy thing for a second now and talk about um, Captain Freeman and Captain Mayer, because they had this little thing going on where it was basically because Captain Mayer was basically the youngest Star Star basically the youngest captain at the time to have been promoted, and he had fast track to that position. Okay, so he was top notch. You know, dress right, dress. He was the guy. So, but in their interactions, I got the impression. Well, he gave Freeman the impression that she was old school, that her style was being dated, and his style and his methods were new and things like that. But the way that I seen it, and I wish that they would have expanded upon it a little bit more, as far as going with that instead of the way that they went, which was that little squabble over the rock. And I kind of understand why they did that based on what was going on, what needed to happen with Tindy, but I still think that they should have explored that a little bit more, just like they explored. Wait, I'm getting ahead of myself. So back on the planet, um, things get out of hand when Commander Phillips joins in and helps to speed up the process of securing these rocks. And the reason that he did that was because his homeboy, Commander Ransom, had got basically assaulted. And I think that that was a callback to the Trouble with Tribbles from the original series of how Scotty reacted when the Enterprise and the captain was insulted. Now, the thing is that the reason that they wanted to speed up is because they was in competition with this other lord, with the other group from Captain Mayer's ship, which seemed to be by the book. They seemed to look down upon the Cerritos lower decks because they considered them a joke and all this types of stuff, right? So they had this little rivalry that was going on between them. But as the episode progressed, we find, and uh, you know the the balls, little fantasy balls. I don't know why I feel weird saying balls, and it's strange. Anyway, the little fantasy balls topple over, break. A whole mist starts to surround, and all of these just mixtures of people's nightmares start to occur. We get to see a Borg anaconda. We get to see a Pennywise Cleon with Batholeth arms. We get to see some kind of weird tentacle thing, which I don't know where that's from, but if I was to see that, that would be a nightmare of mine anyway. All right. So they all end up running into the cave. Captain Phillips, Commander Phillips, Lieutenant Phillips ends up getting caught by, well, this like wushu dragon or something crazy like that, and turns to stone, falls, breaks his arms and everything. They go into the cave, and when I say they, the remainder of the lower decks teams, both away teams, they seal themselves in a cave. Excuse me. And they start to try to investigate what's going on. And another thing that they touched on was the trope in Star Trek,
Powering off.
where another trope in Star Trek where um, the comms is always down. Comms, every time you need comms in an emergency situation, is always the first to go. You think they'll put more effort into securing the comms system, that and a cloaking device. When I don't care if you hit a small little piece of rock in space, cloaking is down. Cloaking is cloaking is always down. But um, so when they get in there, they start to determine that hey, through scans and everything, it's some kind of energy source coming from back in his cave. And it's starting to try to figure out, hey, why are these images the way that they are? So when they get back there, they find Starfleet tech mixed with this alien tech, and all of the and this device is basically recording everything that these people are saying and thinking. Okay, just everything. And they determine that these people who's supposed to be enemies in this diplomacy are basically allies and trying to use that rock to plant in one of the captain's offices to spy on them and sell the information on the market. Now, when we get back to Tendi goes to returns back to sick bay where we run across the doctor, and the doctor just cracks me up. And I know I always talk about profanity in Star Trek, but that is her character, all right? And they wrote her that way. And every time I see her, she reminds me. I don't know if you guys remember. I think it was, what was it, Tiny Toons? They had this black duck, and this black duck in the show they used to always censor everything he said because he was just straight profane. He was hilarious, and he was on a kids show, but the way they did it was comical, and his character. And I liken it to this doctor and her character because she's abrasive, she's straightforward, she's direct, and she's vulgar. All right. So the way that they censor her is nice. She's a nice character. Now, the overall thing about this episode is that I don't know if it was a theme that they were going for, if it was something that they were trying to touch on. I don't know why it wouldn't be because it seems so pronounced. But did you guys pick up on the theme of breaking the rules versus following the rules? And it is a theme that you can trace back all the way to the original series, and it was directly touched on in, say, episodes like what was it, Tapestry from the Next Generation, where Blue Shirt Picard, although he was the same age and he had basically did everything by the book, he never took chances, he never stood out, he never tried to push the boundaries. Okay, and we talked about that before, meaning that Starfleet's charter is to boldly go, to push these boundaries. Okay, so there's always a balancing act in Star Trek and in Starfleet, for instance, where pushing the rules and bending the rules and breaking the rules is something that's kind of indigenous to all captains in Star Trek. All right, especially when you get to be admiral, they just straight up go crazy. But I like the fact that they tried to showcase, okay, well, if you do everything by the book, you become expected, routine. Um, People don't expect anything more of that from you. All right, and that led back to how the other crew truly seen the lower decks crew. We find out that they basically legends with all the exploits that they've done. That at least on their ship, they're seen as basically heroes and rock stars. All right, so I wonder. Oh, Tendi ends up saving the day when she discovers, like I said, in the rock, that they had this device, and Captain Freeman ends up saying, basically, hey, I'm gonna bury the hatchet with you, Captain Mayor, and now we can start with you guys because we gotta press some charges against you guys. So the episode ends with a nice dinner and everything like that. And like I said, I really like the overall messages that they had put forth in this episode, touching on some of the tropes that they have in Star Trek, from the light all the way up to that heavy tropes in Star Trek, which is bending the rules versus following the rules, and standing out versus being routine. All right, so let me know what you guys thought of the episode of Lower Deck. Sorry, this particular video went on a little longer than I expected, but thank you guys for watching. It's a bootleg video. um, Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't, and as always, peace, recycle, and say the whales. You guys be cool.